Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men have asked me for the right words to say to be more attractive, desirable, and more of a leader. And I've found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines. Because at the root of a connected and affectionate relationship and being more effective and inspiring at work is your ability to influence others. But most often, influence is not gained or lost with words. It's from what I call the invisible factors. So I created a quick guide for you called 3 Ways Men Lose Influence at Work and with Women, so you can understand how these invisible factors work and what has women and colleagues both more inspired to say yes. I think you're also going to be surprised to find out the moment when your influence actually begins. So grab the guide for free at shanajamescoaching.com/3ways. That's shanajamescoaching.com/3 and the word ways, WAYS. Or you can text ALIVE to 44144. That's the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144. I hope you enjoy the guide and this episode. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm excited to be here today with Patrick Wolf. Patrick, welcome.
Thank you so much.
We are going to talk about building trust with yourself, building trust with others. Building trust is actually a huge topic that I haven't covered yet on the Man Alive podcast. And I've been amazed in the past, 15 or so years of working with people of all genders of how trust can be broken or built in these little micro moments. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you, Patrick, and let me give you a quick bio before we dive in. So Patrick is really interesting in that he has spent over 20 years in technology and has won, many awards and has been a software architect, but he's also spent many years in a meditation center in Thailand. And in recent years fell in love with authentic relating and has facilitated many events and participated in authentic leadership trainings, which is my background as well, having co-created Authentic SF back in the day that turned into Authentic World. And some of you may know of it, some of you may not. Anyway, Patrick has facilitated 70-person events at Burning Man, events at the World Domination Summit, at Touch and Play in Montreal, and regularly holds workshops in Los Angeles. And so one of the things you were saying, Patrick, to me is that as you started to understand the complexity of human beings, you were much less interested in the complexity of computers. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Like in the beginning, I was really intrigued by the complexity of software projects and architecting big solutions.
Yeah.
And also there was an underlying thing I wasn't actually aware of. I was excited about the amount of control I had over the outcome.
Uh-huh.
There was something exciting about it. I could program something and then I could run it and it would tell me if there's an error and then I would compile and it would just run a million times.
Right. I just love that you just said having control over the outcome, because with human beings, that is so much more rare.
It's so much rarer, and it's also a lot of, when I switched to learning with human beings and understanding how much complexity it is. And it's not like press a button and compile and get an error message. It's a lot of pain and disconnection often in working with humans. Like you make a wrong step, you lose trust, and then the connection can be gone, especially if there wasn't enough trust to start with.
Well, okay, so let's talk about that, right? So on the one hand, I've found that, connection can be lost in a moment and trust can be broken. On the other hand, I've also found that connection can be gained in a moment as well. And so, when I work with men and when I work with people in general, right, there are ways that we talk about how to communicate or how to attune to another person such that we don't have to prevent trust from being broken. We also know how to rebuild trust in moments, which can actually have trust become even stronger, So
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you've worked with trust, as you've facilitated others or yourself, like what are some of the foundations, or what's something that you've learned about trust being broken or being built?
So I heard like a couple of topics. There's like trust with myself, there's trust with others. There's this thing of building trust, regaining trust. So let me like dive into them like in a couple of steps in a way.
Yeah.
So if we start with like trust with others,
yep.
There's like what I notice is like often the way things used to be is like a person would like say something and it would trigger something in my mind about like an association about my own life. And as soon as the person would stop talking, I would like bring in what it triggered about my own experience.
Yeah.
And
okay.
Like,
I'm just noticing, just because your accent, I may repeat certain things, right? But like I think you were just saying, right, there's this association. So someone says something to you, it would trigger something in your mind, and then you would respond about that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Like it would be kind of like a ping pong where what they share triggers something in me and then I share about my own life.
Yes.
But I noticed that we didn't really meet each other in that spot.
Yes. I remember that, like an extreme example with my mother-in-law where, I would mention the word blue and then she would take it and be like, oh, when I went sailing and the ocean was blue. It's like, wait, we're not even having the same conversation here.
Yeah. And then what I learned as I started studying authentic relating and practicing is that each one of us lives in a different world.
Uh-huh.
Like we all have like, even though it seems like we're sitting in the same room, our experience of the room is totally different.
Right.
Because of our own traumas and triggers and history and maybe the countries we came from.
Right. So we can even think we're sitting in the same room or the same conversation, and yet it looks completely different from each of our lenses or positions or whatever.
Yeah. And like knowing that gives me like infinite curiosity about the other person because I know that I can never really know their word.
Ah.
And so,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So already, right, when there's an awareness of, oh, I could never really fully know someone, or the way I'm seeing it is I'm pretty certain it's not going to be the same as this other person. How does that relate to trust?
On a very deep level, because when a person shares something, for me to actually be curious to understand them more.
Uh-huh.
And also like, if I know that my word is different to theirs, and I like hear something from them, can I like reflect back what I actually got, and then let them confirm, so we can build like a kind of shared reality,
right?
That we actually understanding each other's word. And there's something in like when I like reflect back what I heard the other person say, where that starts building trust because the other person starts feeling heard.
Yeah, right. I agree with that, because there's often this way that I can say something and then I don't actually know how it was received. And sometimes when someone says back to me, this is what I heard you say, sometimes it'll be correct. Sometimes it'll be off. Sometimes it'll be very logically and rationally, you got the words right, but I don't feel understood in the emotionality of it or the deeper part of it, right? And so if we're not having fundamentally, if we're not having even the same conversation, or we don't feel understood, trust isn't going to happen. And that happens a lot in, I think about romantic relationships and business partnerships and sales and all of that's a big issue.
And the second part which shows up in there is like one other reason why trust might not be built is because of underlying agendas we are holding. So like the other person, like I might reflect back what I heard, but in the other person there's like an underlying like distrust or like a holding back because I don't know what I'm actually wanting.
Say more about that.
So like naming, let's say like somebody shares something vulnerable. Let just take a breath. Taking a breath is really good, by the way.
Right. Taking a moment for yourself. I mean, I would say that builds trust rather than thinking, oh, I've got to barrel on and make sure that I communicate something really important in this moment. And then it can have us kind of get clenched and disconnected from ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? We get to take a moment.
So I want to actually take this moment, like rather than explaining another example.
Yeah.
So like right in this moment,
Mm-hmm.
I feel underlying a certain anxiousness.
Yeah.
In trying to communicate what I'm trying to express in a good way,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can understand me, that your listeners can understand me.
Yeah.
And in that anxiousness, part of me is like speeding up
Yeah.
to get there faster.
Yes.
And part of me is tightening up. And when people listen to my voice, they feel that in some ways.
Yeah.
And it actually like prevents trust in some ways because there's something unspoken in the moment.
Yes.
And just by sharing that I have a slight anxiousness, and the anxiousness comes from really wanting to deliver value.
Yes.
A bit of trust builds that like, I understand where he's coming from.
Right. And I remember, thank you for being so vulnerable. I mean, I'm just thinking of examples where I remember dating someone in my past and my parents had the experience of him as being really arrogant. And it made me laugh because I thought, he's not arrogant. He's just really socially awkward. But because he's not saying anything about that, it comes off as a little bit more distant or aloof. Or what you're saying, I can hear, if someone hears that speeding up or tightening, or, it might lose trust in a certain way where someone may not feel whether it's relaxed or someone's expertise or something, but in you bringing in, oh, here's the context. I'm feeling a little bit anxious because I really want, I really want you to understand this. We get to feel your heart, your intention, your care, and also the wisdom underneath all of that anxiousness.
And there's something when that happens where both of the people in the conversation start slowing down a bit, and become more present to the present moment.
Yeah.
And so I want to like backtrack for a moment for the things we like touched on in building trust in a conversation. So one thing is like to listen really well, and not only to listen to what the person is saying, but also how they're saying it. So there's kind of this awareness of like somebody might tell a really sad story about like a funeral, for example, but on their face, you see some kind of like relief.
Yeah.
And so rather than like just being with the sadness of the funeral, also like, wow, like you seem kind of relieved as you're talking about this.
Right. Which is so different than if you think someone's talking about a funeral, so they must be sad. So I should respond to their sadness with whatever, I'm just going computer program, whatever program I have inside.
Like calling a function.
Yeah. Versus, oh, I'm looking at this person's face and body language, and I'm having a sense that there's a distinction between what they're saying and how they're saying it, and in getting present to that in the moment, it opens up this whole new world.
And there's something even more interesting on that level is that the person themselves might not be aware that they're feeling relief about the funeral.
Yes.
Like they might have been with a person dying for like 10 years and there's like sadness around it, but part of them is relieved of that long journey being over.
Yes.
And they might not be aware of themselves having felt that. And by actually being present and noticing it and sharing it, the person might see themselves in a new light and has this kind of like gratitude and trust of being seen on a deeper level.
I love that you're saying that, because that's one of my favorite things when I have a conversation with someone and I learn something new about myself. I mean, this is for me personally, right? This might not be for everyone, but I feel when I have that experience of learning something new about me, I feel much more intrigued by that person and by what this connection could be, and who we would be for each other or one another. And it can be really profound. So I love that you brought it back to the moment, the how versus the what, right? And that deeper connection that happens.
And there's something, and you see like the kind of flow of like you seem relieved, rather than saying like you are relieved. There's really like this distinction of like you on your word, I'm in my word, and I'm trying to understand your word. So there's like this real skill around owning my own experience.
Yes.
Rather than like assuming something about yours.
Yeah, and let's do a little bit of discussion of owning one's own experience, because some people know that and some people don't. But
Yeah.
I really appreciate what you just said too around I'm sensing or you seem relieved versus I know you or I know who you are, making some kind of assumption about you. It's more of a check-in of, is this, it's almost like you're saying, is this true, whether you say that or not?
Yes, like saying, like, in my world you appear this way, and I'm wondering
Yes.
if that fits in your world.
Yes. Right. Which is more like that owning your experience and saying, oh, this is how you seem to me, not this is how I know you are.
And
Does that fit for you?
Yeah. And there's
Yeah.
something when we bring it back to the idea of trust.
Mm-hmm.
There's something when another person assumes something about me.
Yeah.
Like when they say, like, you're always so sad or you're always boisterous. There's something in me which just contracts.
Yep.
And it's like, is that really true about me? Do I actually feel that way? Do I actually feel sad?
Yeah.
And when the other person says, like, you seem sad a lot, does it fit for you? There's like this openness of, like, can I inquire into myself and get to know myself in that spot?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to, like, recap again, because it's easy to get lost in all these different topics.
Yes.
So the thing we had, like, the overall topic of, like, building trust with another person.
Uh-huh.
And then listening not only to how they say something, to what they're saying, but also how they're saying it.
Uh-huh.
Reflecting back what I'm getting about them.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing if I have an agenda or if there's, like, an underlying emotion present in me, so that they can feel more trusting of knowing what I'm wanting or where I'm at in a way.
Right. Right. There's a huge difference. And sometimes I talk about it as context. And for couples who are having conversations and one of them is bringing something new or that feels a little bit edgy, we talk a lot about, right, sharing that agenda or sharing a context, because it's so different when someone brings up a conversation out of the blue. It's like, oh, I want to try this new thing that I've never tried before. You know, say intimacy wise or sexual wise or something, versus, oh, I want to try this new thing because I want to feel closer to you, or because I have a sense that we could both feel more pleasure here, right? So there's, when we actually know the agenda or the context, some part of our minds and hearts relax, and we're not making up stories or guessing or trying to interpret the why, right? That deeper why.
And you brought up, like, a really interesting point about, like, I want to try this out with you sexually because I want to feel closer to you. And there is something about not jumping. So there's, like, a feeling inside of me of, like, oh wow, I want to, like, be closer with my partner.
Uh-huh.
And out of that, there's a desire to try something.
Uh-huh.
But often, like, we just skip the step of, like, we want to be closer and we just share the wanting to try something. And another person has, like, this insecurity.
Yep.
Of, like, where did this come from? Like, is the other person, like, dissatisfied?
Right. What are you not satisfied with? Or how am I not showing up good enough? Or
did you see somebody else doing that and you feel like lacking? Like, there's come out this insecurity, and if we go slow enough and share all these pieces, and it also, like, brings up this topic of, like, dating, for example.
Yeah.
Like for example, if I asked a lady, like, do you want to meet up tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually mixing two topics. There's this first topic of, like, do you want to meet up at all?
Uh-huh.
And then, are you available tomorrow? Yep. And there's something when I ask, like, do you want to meet up tomorrow? And the person says no, or she says no. There's this anxiousness inside of me of, like, wow, did she, like, not want to meet up at all? Is it just a date? And this
what
kind
is
of,
she
like,
saying no to?
Yeah, like, in the kind of slowness of going step by step is, like, really beautiful in a relationship, and it brings so much.
Right. I can see too, there's less guessing, there's more trust in yourself, because in that moment where you're like, well, did she not want to be with me? Was it the place? Was it tomorrow? There's a loss of trust in yourself, I can hear.
Yeah, that is another topic of loss of trust in myself. And I want to, like, it's like a whole bigger topic.
Yeah.
And I feel I want to, like, wrap up one more thing about trusting with others.
Great.
and then I would love to go there. I feel like the basic flow which helps me have trust with others is to listen well, to reflect, to share what's happening in the moment, to own what's showing up for me, to be really careful to not make assumptions about them, but to check in every time.
Yep.
And kind of, and also be conscious of where the awareness is moving in the conversation.
What do you mean by that?
Like if one person is sharing, can I keep my awareness with them rather than in me sharing what I just heard them say, putting the awareness back to me?
Like, right. Kind of like you're saying, like the blue reminds me of the ocean.
Yeah. Like you ever like you share something about blue and it really like touches you. And then your mother-in-law like pulls the attention over to her side and you feel a bit left in the rain in a way.
Yeah, kind of dropped.
Yeah. And then the last thing I want to share about that, which helps building trust, is like separating requests from hearing each other.
Ooh, yep.
Which is like a huge thing for me. Like, because when I hear, if my partner says something like the house really feels messy today. Like I can hear that as a request of like, I'm not good enough. I need to fix everything. And I didn't clean up yesterday.
Oh, that's interesting. That doesn't sound like a request. That sounds like.
No, but if I hear the request of like, it should be different. Then it lands in me like, maybe I did something wrong. But if I can just separate like requests of something needing to be different from hearing each other, you can say, oh wow, like the house really seems messy to you today. And I can just be with her in that.
Okay. So, all right. So whether or not your partner has made a specific request, right? Like in my world, I would distinguish that as like, oh, there seems like there's a request there, but you might not have made it yet. But in this case, what I'm hearing is if you're not taking it personally, right? If somebody says the house is messy and then you think, oh God, what did I do wrong? Or how am I being blamed or whatever, is really different than going, oh, the house feels messy to you.
Yes. Like kind of like be with other person's experience and hear them and reflect on them.
Yes.
And separate it from making requests to actually clean up together. Yeah.
Right. So I think there's a couple of things in there. There's that I think are really useful in couples and again in colleagues and all of that is, oh, did I actually make a request or was I just making a statement about the reality of our situation, right? And in some of my business partnerships, it's been really, really helpful to have a sense of, are we in decision-making mode? Or are we in brainstorming mode? Because if I know that context, I have a better sense of how to listen to you. And so, but then I think you brought up another point also of what builds trust, which is if somebody says something about the situation we're both in or me, if I start to take it personally and run off in my own mind and my own inner critic, right, then there is a breakdown of trust there, probably on both sides, I would imagine.
And it actually is like it leads into like two different things. Like the breakdown of trust with other person, and can I like check in with them, like, oh wow, like what you just said, it seems like it lands for me like you're unhappy with me, and I just want to check in if it actually feels that way for you.
Yes.
So there's that part, and this is other part of like, how do I hold myself when there's less trust with myself?
Right. Which, okay, so we said we were going to go into the trust with self after, but I'm appreciating again that you brought up, oh, so if somebody says something, I could actually
check in with them. Yeah, it's so simple.
It's so simple, and yet it's so
novel at
hard.
The same time. Yeah. And the reality is, like, since I started authentic relating and practicing these things, I have been in conversations I never imagined I would have. Like I have been in conversations where a person like steps back from wanting to be in a friendship with me, and actually like, can I like bring curiosity in there? Can I like be curious about the experience and actually learn about them in that spot rather than shutting down?
Oh, so beautiful. And so powerful too, where some people think like, well, this must be the end. And I think with a lot of the authentic relating with these tools and the the willingness to be curious and to not make assumptions, right? Certain things can be, moved through or discussed, or conflict can dissolve in such profound ways.
It's very beautiful. Like I've basically like this kind of journey of like being in connection in more and more moments rather than becoming unconscious and disconnected.
Did you say being connected in more moments?
Yeah, my German accent. Let me speak slower. Being in connection in more and more moments rather than going into disconnection or unconsciousness.
Right.
And it's such a beautiful journey. And it brings so much newness and so much discovery of like when you said like assume there's an end, like I used to have a label of this is the end of a connection.
Yeah.
And there's so much more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. This is really powerful, and I'm loving the subtleties and the slowing down, and how you even back in the beginning, as you stopped yourself and you said, okay, I want to come back to this moment, what's actually happening here. And I think so many people live in this fast-paced, associative world, right? Of like, I said blue, you said ocean, we're going here. And that was actually really profound for me as well, when I stopped trying to connect with another person by using a similarity, right? When I added to the repertoire, if I listen to this person, I can ask questions and get curious and get to know this person more deeply. And then actually we both feel more connected. So I'm actually thinking we can even save connection with self for another episode, because we're running out of time. So
it's actually a beautiful area, connection with self and trust with self. Like I've done such profound journey.
Yeah.
And it would be nice to have a whole episode for that.
Yeah, I think we should.
So many tools around it.
So for this topic, connecting with others, what do you want to either highlight once again, or what do you want to leave people with that we haven't said yet?
There's something around, like if I actually understand that we both live in different worlds, and even with my best effort, I can really never get to know your world. Mm-hmm. It actually opens me up to be profoundly impacted in my own world by opening up to you.
Profoundly impacted in your own world by opening up to me. Yeah. Can you say more about that?
Like if I'm actually becoming curious about you and the way your world looks and feels in this moment, and when you share that when you talk about blue, and I said, wow, like you brought up blue like 3 times. I imagine it really means something to you. And I'm wondering like how blue appears to you.
Right.
And what shows up when you talk about blue.
Yeah.
And it's suddenly like you might like share like a whole episode of your life. And I like leave the conversation with a deeper appreciation of blue than I might have ever had in my own life.
Right. Right. A deeper appreciation of blue. And tell me if this is true also, a deeper appreciation of how that person, orients such that blue is so exciting or inspiring, or right, why blue for that person touches them so much. You get a deeper appreciation and understanding of that person.
Totally.
Yeah.
And not only of blue, but of that person as well.
Right, of both.
And I'm also like, there's also this deeper layer of like, what has that person, like who is that person and what has them be so excited about blue, for example. And it gives me like a deeper understanding of like what actually like motivates them in their life.
Right.
What actually excites them, like what gets them get up in the morning. And it might actually like impact me in my own motivation in life, because I'm suddenly like opening to the whole depths.
Oh my gosh. I'm so thrilled that you just went there, right? That you can go from blue to the depth of what motivates someone in one's own life that actually has an impact on your own motivation, right? I mean, that is what I've found through having these deeper conversations.
Mm. And I think the thing I want to like end with is a little story.
Great.
So I was at this retreat and I did an exercise around labeling. So we were like in the forest. Shasta Forest was really beautiful.
Oh, I love that.
And we were meant to go around and just put labels on things around us. Like, this is a sign, this is a tree, this is a branch, this is grass. And then we were like meant to go up to something and drop the label and experience it.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked up to this piece of wood, which I would have labeled a sign.
Right.
And I suddenly like touched it and I noticed like how many years of rain have come onto this piece of wood.
Mm.
And how the person who carved the sign had like the handwriting like differed between the different letters. And I imagined that like different things going through them. And I might have done it over multiple days. And I touched on how many people have seen it and have been directed by it.
Wow.
And suddenly as I like touched on it, it just like opened up this infinite depth of what this piece of wood was like and how it was home for different animals. And suddenly like, and I noticed how often in my mind I just make a labeled sign and my mind moves on and feels bored.
Yep.
And suddenly in that moment, it's just like exploded in the universe of depths where maybe in years I couldn't fully understand this sign.
So beautiful.
And the same is actually with your partner or your loved one or a person you meet on the street. There's so much fucking depth. Sorry for the word, but there's so much unbelievable depth in each one of them that we can spend like a lifetime getting to know them. And that curiosity brings so much newness into our own lives when we can actually let ourselves be touched by another person.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's such a beautiful story of how it's so easy, and you know, our brains do it for a reason, right? We categorize and we put things in boxes, and it helps us not have to pay attention to everything because we would get overloaded. But in that, we can miss out on the profundity of moments of our loved ones, of, you know, even like, I just love how you just said, okay, it's a sign, it's a piece of wood. Oh, the rain and the people who created it and their emotional experience and all the people who have seen it and the impact it's had. You just opened up this whole world where I think it's almost impossible to be bored.
Yeah, it is literally impossible.
Yeah.
And so like I feel like the thought I want to leave with, like, can you go back to your loved one today?
Yeah.
Or to the person you work with and actually look at them and become really curious. Who are they actually? What actually drives them and what's important for them? And can you actually like check in with them to understand them more and then let yourself be touched by that?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Right. Bonus points if you can do that with someone who you're upset with, or you have a conflict with, or you're frustrated with, if you can get curious. But right, even just to do it with someone around you. I remember when years and years ago when we were leading more authentic man programs, we would have this conversation, right, about waking up every morning if you have a partner and getting to know someone anew. Like you're saying, we really can't fully get to know someone. And when we think we do, it's like we take the life force and the energy out of people and relationships. And so thank you for awakening that in me. And I'm imagining our listeners, this has been really beautiful.
I have one more thought I don't want to like part without sharing.
Okay, you've got 30 seconds and then tell people where they can find you.
There's like two ways to listen to a person. One is like listen from the outside and kind of like analyze them.
Yeah.
Which can feel a bit distancing.
Yes.
And the other one is like to sit in the same boat as them and share with them what's it like being with them as you're listening.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes such a distinct difference in building trust, which is the overall topic.
Yep.
That like listening, reflecting, and sharing what it's like being with them.
Yes. Yeah, versus analyzing or rationalizing.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was a good one. All right. Where can people find you if they want more of you?
I've got a website, patrickwolf.net, PATRICKWOLF.net. I do coaching. I facilitate about 50 authentic relating events, and I'm doing more of them.
Great. Beautiful. All right. We'll include the link in the show notes. And thank you so much for being here today and for, like I said, you know, awakening. I feel in this moment, I feel more having been with you, I feel more awe. I feel my heart is more open. I feel softer, more inspired. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Shanna.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope it gives you a sense of what's possible and how good your life can be. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe to Man Alive and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/manalive to get outtakes, videos, and raw footage I only share there. These are some of the most interesting parts of these expert conversations. You can also grab your copy of The Unknown Power to accelerate your career and solidify your confidence with women, because the two are related, and I know you don't have to settle for one or the other. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.